Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Jonathan. And thank you, Adi, too, for setting it up. So, where are we in the Torah and in the Jewish calendar? Is this we're at a very big moment, as it feels like we often are, but this is a big one where the books of the Torah are shifting. This coming week's Parsha is the very first reading of the book of Devarim, and it's called Devarim. And what we have is Moses very shortly going to die. And he begins a story about what has just happened. So just meaning from the time of the Israelites were just crossing the desert, and lots of things happened in there. We remember a lot of those things: the golden calf, the receiving of the 10 Commandments, and a lot of the sort of comings and goings of that time. And Moses begins to talk to the people to retell that story. And the way that he begins to retell it, from first reading, it's not entirely clear, but what the commentators point out is that as he's naming the places that they've been, each one of those names of the places that the Israelites have traveled to comes with it a story of how they sinned, of something that they did wrong. So one of the places he mentions is the place where they did the golden calf. The other place that he mentions is where the spies went into the promised land and came back and said it was like a terrible land and they shouldn't go. And so Moses begins this journey of telling them, like, you really messed up a lot, and you really caused problems, and you didn't listen. And this is what I'm telling you right now. This is your story. And upon kind of first reading, it feels shaming. It feels like really hard to hear, putting ourselves in the shoes of the Israelites. And at least my first kind of response to that is like, oh, like I want to look away. I don't want to have to answer for all of these terrible things that were done. And another interesting thing to note is that those sins were actually not done by the people sitting there about to cross. They were done by their predecessors, their ancestors, because all of those people that did those sins are dead. They're in the desert, they're gone, and this is the next generation. But Moses talks to them saying, you did this, in a way of trying to have them account for what came before them and to really look and own the history of what came before them. And it's not pretty, and it's painful. And I've been thinking about this in a few contexts. So we're leading up also to Tisha B'Av, as I think some of the other teachers this week have been talking about. This is a very sad time in the Jewish calendar and in the feelings that we are holding, because Tisha B'Av, that's coming this weekend, is the sort of anniversary of the destructions of the temple. And it is sad. And it's this time when we're supposed to feel into that sadness. Some of us might fast. Some of us might really like feel the weight of the tragedies, the many, many, many tragedies and pains that have happened to our people, the traumas that have happened to our people. And we're moving our way slowly but surely into this like bottomed out notion of sadness and destruction. And also in the Torah portion, we have this accounting, not just for what we've done, but for the sins, the pain caused, the mistakes of our ancestors. And it makes me think about, I practiced quite a lot in the Zen world, and there was a chant we used to say that was about sort of owning this chant, can't remember the exact words, but it was something like, all my ancient twisted karma, I hereby take on. And I always remembered it because I liked that phrasing of the ancient and the twisted, meaning like it's pretty twisted back there. We have a lot, most of us individually in our own lives and collectively can recognize, can see the pain of what our ancestors have carried, of what we're carrying. And maybe, God willing, with our practice and with our life, we can start to do some of that untwisting, that untangling of that pain that we're carrying. But none of that can happen if we can't look at it and face it and be honest about the truth of the pain that we and others have caused, that the pain, the trauma that lives in our genes, that and lives and is carried in our bodies. There's unfortunately like no other way but looking at it and seeing it and owning it, and then being willing to allow it to be transformed. And I think that's what Tisha B'Av is about. And I think that's what this part of the Torah is about. It made me think of one other thing, which is there's a beautiful book called that Isabel Wilkerson wrote, Pulitzer Prize winning writer, called The Warmth of Other Suns. She also wrote a book called Caste, which is beautiful. And this is what she says about, so this book is about the great migration of African Americans from the South up north and a lot of the trauma and the pain that they faced. And in writing the book and in shining a light on that trauma, she wrote, "Our country is like a really old house. I love old houses. I've always lived in old houses, but old houses need a lot of work, and the work is never done. And that's what our country is like. And you may not want to go into that basement, but if you really don't go into that basement, it's at your own peril. And I think that whatever you are ignoring is not going to go away. Whatever you're ignoring is only going to get worse. Whatever you're ignoring will be there to be reckoned with until you reckon with it. And I think that's what we're called upon to do where we are right now." So this is about our country, but it's also about our people. And if our country is an old house, we got a lot older of a house when it comes to the Jewish people. And so there is a lot of basements, and there is a lot that we want to bravely call upon our bravery and our willingness to sit in the middle of and to face. So that is what our practice will be today. And I will guide us through and also leave some time for silence. If you want to find a position that feels comfortable for you as we dive in together, you can give your body any kind of stretch or opening that feels good for you. Your shoulders, your neck. Taking a few deep breaths to settle the body. Bringing some softness into the jaw, into the shoulders, the arms, muscles of the face. You can close your eyes, or you can keep them just softly focused in front of you. Your hands can be folded in your lap, palms up if you find yourself falling asleep, or palms down if you'd like to bring some rest into your body. And as you settle, I want want to just invite you to notice what you're feeling in this moment. What's arising for you in relationship to this topic? Thinking about your own life, your individual life, what it's important that you hold, that you see, that might have caused harm to yourself or to others. And not with a frame of shaming or punishing, but actually from a frame of love, because we need to be able to hold ourselves accountable, to go into the basement in order to keep living in this house, in order to keep moving forward to healing. It's okay to make mistakes. And it's on me to try and make right those mistakes I've made. And then moving the lens a little larger, noticing if anything is coming to you from perhaps your familial line, your ancestral line, a few generations back. What stories are you still carrying that cause harm to yourself or to others? Can you accept those stories, that they happened, that they were the best that we had at the time? And perhaps just sitting in the pain of those stories, of that trauma. With the intention of healing, of undoing, of transforming. Just breathing in into those places, those twisted places. Breathing out that commitment to stay, to listen, and to be present. Perhaps opening that frame a little bit larger. To our country, to this country, if you're in America, or whatever country you are in. the pain that has been caused, the harm that is done, the institutions that were built on that harm. Racism, of white supremacy. Again, not from the place of shame, but from the place of accountability and love. It's not our fault, but it is our responsibility. It is our task to allow our hearts to be broken. And opening the lens wider to our Jewish people, to the struggles of our Jewish people from the beginning, from back, from struggles we may know about to struggles we don't know about, that led us to this place of survival, from places of utter destruction and pain. Massive, massive mistakes and massive trauma and pain. Harm that was done to us, harm that maybe we perpetuated. And in whatever way makes sense for you, bringing that courage to sit in the middle of that, to let it hit your body, to breathe through it. It was not our fault, but it is our responsibility to heal from, to transform. So you can return, you can stay there, you can return to any part that feels the most salient to you right now. Breathing in that truth, that sadness. Breathing out that commitment, that transformation. If your mind is wandering, it's totally normal. You can always come back to the feeling of your feet on the ground, the rise and fall of your breath in this moment. This reminder of being alive with all of its joys and all of its pain. If you would like, you can take the last few moments to set an intention. How are you going to heal? How are you going to transform legacies of pain into transformation, into liberation?
We'll take this practice with us, as those who wish can unmute and join us in Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
V'yalma divrachute v'yamlik malchute b'chayechon u'v'yamechon v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael. V'agala u'zman kariv yimru amen. Deshmei Rabba Mavorach Elam Olmei Almayim. Rach yishtabach ba'ar v'tomam v'yitnaseh yitadar v'yitkalev v'yishal v'yidkud shabichu ela minkol dercha v'shirata ad v'nechamata v'miran v'alma v'imru amen. Rabba min Shemayim Im Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mramaz, Uyaseh shalom, Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, kol Yoshvei Tevel v'imru amen.
Jonathan, you need to unmute yourself. I'm sorry.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you for making this moment in the week one of practice and of community. And thank you, Yael, for your teaching and leading us in meditation. Those who wish to stay are welcome to put questions in the chat. If you have a question for Yael or a question about practice. How is it possible to carry with honesty important familial stories without continuing to carry the associated pain, but rather to move toward healing for both myself and my descendants?
That is the question. And I think in my experience, I think step one is just what you're doing, which is shining a light on what that pain is and what those stories are, so that it's not just life. It's not just the thing we think is just true. And then it's practice. It's every time seeing that come up again and trying to do to kind of have a different outcome. But the seeing and the feeling, I can't skip that. I shouldn't have skipped that part. The feeling the pain, because it's real. And all this research around epigenetics, and there's a beautiful book about this called My Grandmother's Hands, which is about the sort of body-based experience of trauma that comes through generations. And it really requires the kind of metabolizing of pain and trauma so that you can respond in a different way. And it's a life's work. It's not a small thing, but I believe that it is our life's work. Thank you for that beautiful question.
So a question, can you talk about regret in this process?
Yes. So in my family, in my immediate nuclear family, I have two small kids, and we hired someone to help us, like a coach, for a few sessions, because things were in mayhem, disarray, and the kids were wild. And one of the things that stuck with me from that process was she had us kind of write value statements as a family. And one of the key value statements was, you're supposed to always start with, like, in this family, we are allowed to make mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. In this family, when you make a mistake, you try and make it right. And that worked really well for us in our actual family. I found myself a few days later, I had made this like big blunder in a work situation, and it was so deeply shameful and embarrassing. You say regret, but for me, it was like, oh, like I wanted to just die. It was so horrible and shameful, the feeling. And I can't, out of nowhere, I remembered that line. And I said to myself, like, in this family, in this body family, it's okay to make mistakes. And when you make a mistake, you just try and make it better and best as you can. Obviously, sometimes you cannot repair a mistake, but just kind of like providing that sense of like, well, next time I will try and do better. I will try and repair the harm. And it was really helpful for me. So maybe, hopefully, it'll be helpful for you because I see other people also chatting about the difficulty of forgiving themselves for harm that's been done.
And just, you've already done it in your personal way, but perhaps you could review what it is that your invitation is, what the instructions were, as was asked by Lester.
Sure. So if you wanted to try this outside of our frame of meditation, it's really about sort of noticing what stories come up for you when you think about, first in your own life, places where maybe you miss the mark, you hurt yourself, you've been living in a way that hasn't been good for yourself or somebody else. So, some examples that come to me from my life is, when I haven't been taking the rest that I need, and I've been working my body too hard and it's painful. Or this morning, I had a nice little fight with my husband and I can sense in the fight, like, okay, like there's a higher person that's me that is not showing up right now, but I'm like picking at a small thing, and doesn't mean that I think he was all right or I was all wrong, but I was sort of locked in that like fight mode. And it wasn't like treacherous harm I caused, but I caused some harm. I made, I wasn't my most expansive self. And same thing with myself. And so it's just like when you notice this is true, when you notice you've done something, can you sit in the middle of that without shame or beating yourself up? Because that doesn't help. To say, like, it's in this family, we make mistakes. And in this family, we try and make them right. And maybe that for me, that would mean really committing to finding some time to rest, or going to my husband and saying, I'm sorry. Or when there's a longer term of a pain that you're carrying, again, either yours or maybe something that is part of your family, like, for instance, the tendency to overwork is a familial thing. It comes multiple generations in my family. So even the little things we notice, like, often have roots much farther back. And then it's that same process, like, ouch, this really hurts. This is really painful. This is really sad, to notice the ways it's showing up again. And it's okay. And I make a commitment in this moment, every single moment, a new chance to try something different. And so just in that little sit, I was trying to kind of give us a little flavor of that, but that was what the instructions were supposed to sort of guide us towards.
Nora offers us the insight that we can make mistakes, but we are not a mistake.
Beautiful. Really beautiful.
And that's what allows us to then make a change, because we are not immutable. But the next question, this will be the last right now. If we're responsible to pay for past generations, how do we possibly have any control of anything? Are we destined to be with pain?
Yeah. And I don't know if I would necessarily say we're responsible to pay for them. I think we are paying for them. Like, already we are feeling the pain of the past generations. And that is just true. And so the question is, what do we do with that? How can we find healing, and through healing, transformation, so that we don't make somebody else pay. It's about, whether it's our descendants, which somebody else mentioned earlier, or it's just people we come in contact with where we're causing harm left and right because it's in us. And so it's a process of just healing and noticing within yourself of like, this hurts and I don't want to continue it anymore. And I'm going to try and find the resources, whether that's therapy or, a meditation teacher, or the beautiful book. Somebody recommended Tears of Firestone's book, which is beautiful. But how can we start to do that healing process? So less of like a punishment and a paying, and more of like a healing and transformation. That's our opportunity.
Thank you, Yael. And thank you, everyone, for your participation, for your presence, for your questions, and for your offerings in the chat. That will be it for today. And I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow for meditation again at 12:30, or maybe even a little bit before. Bye, everyone.